All right, guys, I hope you're super excited to see exactly how I've been doing this for the last 1 to 2 years, but specifically the last 6 to 9 months. So when it comes to utilizing your points for travel, what you have to understand is first you need points, right? So that's not what this video is about. This is assuming you've either gathered maybe 50, 100, 200,000 points just from credit card sign-up bonuses. I'll link to some of my recommended ones in the description below this video, where you'll get the most bang for your buck when it comes to actually gathering your points, earning your points with credit card bonuses, and then how you spend. But that's a whole nother topic that we're not gonna go into. Just know the first step is you need points, right? Plenty of ways to get them, especially if you're a US citizen. Now, the next thing is you need to understand where do you actually wanna travel to, okay? It's not as simple as like, okay, I live in Oklahoma City and I wanna go to London. What's the 3 buttons I press before I get like a really good flight deal? It's not that simple. And it's always changing depending where you're flying to, where you're flying from, when you're flying, and how flexible you are. Those are all major factors, and in order for you to get the best deal possible, right? So flexibility is a huge part of this. Like just in my initial search, because I'm gonna walk through a couple of examples of how to fly to 1 or 2 common places that you probably will be going from and going to. And you're gonna see that depending on the time of year, depending on the day of the week, depending on the reward system that you're searching in, you're gonna get different prices or availability as a whole, okay? And also one big thing too, it's usually better to book one way at a time. What do I mean by that, right? So if let's say you're building a round trip ticket, I've found more often than not, it's more economical and literally more flexible if you book leg by leg, or at least one way by one way, okay? And depending on, let's say, like I'll give you one example. We had a business trip in Dubai. We live in South America, down in Medellin, Colombia. And we found that there were some pretty good deals, not necessarily going from Colombia to Dubai, but we are from Washington, D.C. mainly, and we have family there and friends there. And I saw good deals going from Washington, D.C. to Dubai, right? So what I did was I broke up that trip into separate legs, okay? Separate one-way tickets, and basically strung them together for one big itinerary. So we flew from Colombia to Washington, D.C., spent a few days there, from Washington, D.C. to London. Okay, and why I chose London was not just because London is a cool city, but also you could fly direct to Dubai from Washington, D.C. There's just not a ton of flight options, at least inventory from the dates I was looking for reward tickets. And I didn't want to spend 20,000 US dollars for a ticket. I would never do that. But there were great choices for Washington, D.C. to London as one booking with rewards, and then from London to Dubai. So that actually became probably our greatest trip we've taken so far. It was super cool. You'll probably see B-roll footage of it somewhere on the screen here. Once again, showing how cool it was, just laying in Emirates first class after getting the best service in the world and looking up on one of the most comfortable beds in the air and seeing stars on the ceiling. Pretty unique, right? So something you also need to be aware of too is how you're earning the points, right? Like credit cards are gonna be key. And there's some major programs that you're gonna wanna take advantage of. First is gonna be your Amex points. Second is gonna be your Chase. Those are arguably equal, more or less in value, depending on where you're flying from, where you're flying to, and more or less how you spend is gonna give you similar benefits, right? And then there, of course, is Capital One and Citi as well. Both have very valuable rewards systems and great transfer partners, okay? Because the name of the game is not just how you earn, but it's how you use them. And that's where the transfer partners come into play. So if you look at my screen here, you're gonna see that I have 1,539,045 American Express points. That's a lot of points. I could fly a lot. And I'm regularly earning just because of the nature of my business. We're replenishing a couple 100,000 points every month. Thankfully, I have a business that I can do that with. But how I use these points is even more important, right? The transfer partners are key. This is, if we look at airlines, you're gonna see Aer Lingus, that's like a local European. Aeromexico, obviously Mexico, Aeroplan, Air France, right? You see all these. Majority of these you're not going to use unless you're going on specific routes, or like I wouldn't use Aer Lingus unless I'm flying within Europe, most likely, more likely than not. But there's others that you have tons of options, right? So I'll go through a list. So just to go over the list with you, what I found to be the most value as far as options and variety is going to be first going to be Air Canada Aeroplan. Okay, this is probably one of the best, and the reason why is because one, you have a group of airlines, like with Star Alliance, for example, like United is in this group. If we open up Star Alliance, so when we look at Star Alliance, you can see here that all these airlines are a part of Star Alliance, right? So United, Turkish Airways, Austrian, Avianca, ANA, Copa, right? So Air Canada. So when you have something like Air Canada, okay, and you go to Air Canada's rewards program, sometimes you get access to the inventory from these other airlines, depending on availability and some other factors too, right? But the point is, this is how you tap into other airlines' rewards points and rewards systems at a heavy discount. You'll see, I'll give you an example where we search directly on United with their rewards. In theory, it's like a one-to-one value, right? So I could transfer my Amex points to Air Canada, and then it's like a one-to-one transfer unless there's some special going on. And then if I think Chase does to United, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it would be a similar one-to-one value, right? So the problem is the same flight, let's say I get access to a United flight on Air Canada's reward system, and it's 60,000 points for one-way business class to whatever route I want to go. If I search that same flight on United with those same points, but I sent those points to United, that same flight might be 200,000 points. So not all reward systems are created equal. Now, once in a while, you will find a good deal, but more often than not, unless I want to fly like a specific plane on a specific route, and I'm not being flexible at all, usually sending my points directly to the airline's reward system, like the United, the American, those are not going to give you the most bang for your buck. It's going to be the ones I mentioned, right? So in this specific order, I found this to be true more often than not. We usually Air Canada Aeroplan, Air France Flying Blue, which is also KLM, and of course other airlines that they partner with. Avianca, surprisingly, is pretty good. Their customer service and their airline itself, not so good. But we got access to Lufthansa first class in the back door of Avianca Life Miles, right? It wasn't like a crazy cheap deal, but it was an amazing deal for a first class experience. Qantas is actually how I found, the Qantas rewards system was actually how I found some of the best deals with Emirates, right? And these are just some examples, okay? Now, when you're looking and researching your trip, obviously understanding a few factors, being flexible with the dates, neighboring airports, right? So like, let's say you live in Oklahoma City, probably not a ton of great flight options internationally from Oklahoma City, so you probably have to fly to other airports. So you might do what's called a positioning flight, where you fly from Oklahoma City to New York City, or Oklahoma City to Atlanta, or Oklahoma City to Miami, or Oklahoma City to Houston. The more you search and look and just kind of play around with flight options and deals, you'll learn there's certain airports that fly to a lot of places. I just named off a few. Whereas the smaller airports, like Detroit, you might find some direct flights to like Tokyo, for example, but you're not gonna find a ton of options outside of those specific routes, right? So the game is you're juggling all these variables of what airports fly where, which airlines tend to serve those routes, right? And what airlines are partnering with those airlines that you have a rewards program you can get access to, right? By transferring your Amex or your Chase or your City points that you earn, transferring them into Air Canada. Air Canada gets you access to United inventory sometimes, right? As an example. So it's never one answer. It's never black and white. Like, this is why there's people that do this as a service. They actually find and book your flights for you and help you optimize your points. Pretty cool stuff. You can do it yourself too. I could have someone do this before. I could have someone do this for me, but I enjoy like geeking out and searching and winning the game of the points. So I found that I just like doing this, which is why I'm making a video about this too. And I like helping people with solving this for themselves. So let's look at some example flights, okay? And we're gonna also, as a cost comparison, look at the difference between retail cost, what you pay off Google, which tends to be the best, more or less, price in cash. Then we'll look at American Express rewards, which is why you should almost never book in their rewards platform. And then we're gonna look at each one of the key rewards transfer partners. So you can see maybe we find the same flight, same route, same date, identical, but one might be half the price in points, okay? With the assumption that we're looking for a one-way ticket. Remember, we always want to book leg by leg. It's typically better that way, but you got to test it all to really see what is best. Okay, we're going to fly ideally first if possible, and we're going to go from Washington, D.C., and we're going to go all the way to Dubai. We're going to go on November 13th, because I picked it out as a specific good option, as to show you how you get a killer deal with this stuff. Because like you see here, these are the cash prices. This is for first class. Most likely these are going to all be Emirates. And I think November 13th was a good example that I found when it comes to rewards. So let's do a search. Okay, so this one-way ticket with Emirates would cost you $15,777 if you flew on first class, which is incredible, probably still not worth 15 grand, and then business, right? So business would cost you about, if you flew Emirates, 4,300. It's direct flight too, which is pretty cool. These other options, this is like part of it. This is basically where we start. We look at what's actually available, right? Not all these flight options are going to be available on those specific dates, if not all of your transfer partner options. Sometimes they are. Okay, now we're going to go into the Amex portal just to show you how much of a scam it can be, and I'll explain when you actually do it. November 13th. Okay, so here we have our apples to apples comparison. You could see here on my screen that this one-way ticket in Google costs, if we go back to first class, $15,000. Inside Amex for cash-to-cash comparison is actually cheaper. They give you a discount, and it's $12,591, so it's a discounted rate, more or less. But typically, you're going to find Amex does mark up the price points on their flights, okay? And then if we look at I'm assuming this is business class. If we look at the business class, so business class is $42.52, and I think that it was right about that price for Google. Now, what you want to pay attention to here is the cash to point value. So you're looking at 100 points equals $1, more or less, right? So we just add 2 zeros onto this, and that is how we will use our points. So basically, if you want to fly, let's stick with the first class example because it's available. So if we go back to first class, I would basically burn all my points on a one-way ticket, which I would never do because it's a waste. And we're going to get a killer deal, maybe 80–90% off in points, okay? And you'll see why. Because these points are usually wasted if you keep them in here. Now, one thing to mention, I have the Amex Platinum. As you can see here, there's a 35% airline bonus. That's, I believe if you hold the Amex Platinum and you book within the portal, you get a reimbursement for 35% of the points you use if you book with points. I've actually never utilized this. I've compared it. It's always worth comparing. Sometimes it does make more sense when you don't have a lot of inventory options with transfer partners, but normally it doesn't make as much sense, right? So read through this if you are an Amex Platinum holder or thinking about it, because this can give you a comparable option depending on how they price the flight itself and then the points with it, okay? But yeah, so you basically get like a 35% discount with points, but still, it is not going to make sense compared to the magic that we're about to do. So now let's look at some of the most popular transfer partners that are going to give you the best deal knowing this flight. Keep in mind too, where you're flying from and then where you're flying to, like I mentioned before, is going to dictate which one of these transfer partners makes the most sense. If you like live in Asia and you're trying to go to Europe, the inventory is probably going to be better used for one versus the other, right? Whereas if you live in the Americas and you're trying to go to Europe, or America's trying to go to Asia, like the Air France, KLM, Flying Blue Miles is not going to be best if you're trying to go to Asia. More often than not, always worth the search though. So let's take a look. We're going to go on the same flight from Washington, D.C. IAD, and we're going to go to Dubai. And we're going to go on a one-way with points on November 13th. One adult. Let's do a quick search. Okay, so now we have all of our options lined up, at least initially. Now remember, our cash cost for this first class flight is going to be $15,000. Our cost inside of the Amex portal is discounted on the cash, but still a crazy amount of points, 1.3 million points. And then if we look at First Air Canada, if we go first class, not the best options. About 500,000 points, but still you can see it's a third, almost a third of the cost of the points if you just leave them in Amex and do nothing with them. There's a small $79 fee, but still that's nothing, right? And then if we go to Qantas, we'll come to Qantas last, because I'm just going to tell you that's the winner, right? But just so you see the difference here. So if we look at what Air France came back with, it's taken us through Paris, right? On mainly Air France, I don't see any, you can see the airlines here. Like Virgin would be kind of cool, it's part of the leg, but nothing's as good as what we saw already. Obviously it's a little bit cheaper if we take this one, but this one requires, this is business class, it's not first class. You're going Air France and Air France all the way, which would be nice too. It's a great product, business class, but you have a connection in Paris, right? And you're looking at 82,000 miles, still like significantly lower in cost. And I think nothing came back for Avianca, right? Because I don't think they partner with Emirates or any of the specific airlines, or they don't have availability. Now, if we look at, here's what's cool. If we look at the same flight from Washington, D.C. to Dubai, direct on their, I believe this is their A380, or I believe it's their A380. You can usually see the details here. Airbus, yep, this is the one with the shower, with multiple bars, like to ceiling walls within your own little suite. It's cool. I haven't done this one yet. I've only done the 777 version or 787 version, which is still pretty cool. But you can see here, the same flight is available. Yes, you have to pay $835 in taxes, but it's only 170,000 points, which is still better than Air Canada, which is 575,000 points and $79, versus our original ticket, which was going to cost us 1,259,070 points. We are now have the option to get access to the same flight for 170,800 points. That's a massive savings. Like the average Joe that just signs up for a couple credit cards could get access to this if they're smart with their money and their spending. The average business owner that has a high spend category like advertising like we do, this is like a drop in the bucket almost, right? You can earn this one-way ticket in 1 to 2 months depending on your spend volume. So that's just one example, okay? And we could go for hours talking about this. Like what we'll do next, we'll play around with the dates. We'll see if there's like a better flight option. If we don't like the hours or the city, if we can't find Washington, D.C., maybe we'll look at Philadelphia or Baltimore or New York or something regional as well. There's so many different ways to do this, and it all depends on you, where you're trying to go from, where you're trying to go to, right? And just to give you one more quick example, let's say we want to go from New York City to Athens, Greece. And it's April almost, so we'll look at going sooner. April 23rd, maybe. April 23rd. So if we fly first class, we're looking at about $5,000. If we fly business class, we're looking at about half the price, but it looks like, yeah, they're all going to have probably like one connection. You can see the airline options change. If you want to go deeper, you could even, let's say we wanted to do this one with United, you could even go deeper. And actually, these are partners of United. So we're looking at Lufthansa and Condor. I've never flown them. So now let's look in our portal. So if we look at JFK and we're going to go to Athens, and then we're going to go on April 23rd. Look at first class. We'll do the same thing here. Modify the search. Modify the search. JFK. Athens. Okay, and then we'll give Air France one last chance. Usually, I found a few decent deals, but honestly, the last few months it's been really bad trying to get anything decent on Air France flying blue miles. The point value is usually really bad. There's Athens, boom, and of course we're going in April 23rd, boom, one way. So first, Amex, let's see if we have anything first class. It looks like flight details. Oh, it is first class, nice. But it's like a mix, first and business. I'm sure it's still pretty cool, but probably not worth it unless it's like Emirates or Singapore or Etihad. Same thing here, business, first and business. Right, so most likely, like we'll still take a peek, but most likely there's going to be better used for like a business class route. And then if we look at short by lowest price, this is, which class is this? It's business class. Business class, yeah, so it looks like the best comparison is going to be, let's tweak this search to business. Okay, so we have our comparison now. If we just pop this back in business, cash value, we're looking at $2,000 to $4,000, depending which way we fly. Obviously, some cheaper options, like more basic, would be Egypt Air. Not a terrible product, just not like on the upper end of business classes, right? So if we can find something comparable for point cost, let's do it. Now, if we look inside of American Express, $4,000 cash, almost 500,000 points. That's robbery, okay? And this wouldn't be bad. British Airways is super nice. It's one of my favorite products, like their newer stuff, okay? Now, this is interesting. So this is maybe Egypt Air, Air Europa plus Aegean. Never flown those either. But you can see, you just got to kind of dig through these. But we just can all basically tell right away, even with a 35% point redemption, like point discount, it's still not a good deal, okay? Now, if we go to where usually the sweet spot is, look at this, okay? Swiss Air, we found it's a little bit longer layover, but only 70,000 points with $116. And I've never flown Swiss, but I don't think it's the best, but it's definitely not the worst business class product. If we look at Qantas, premium economy, and I'll show you a little hack too. So this is a mixed cabin if we fly on with Avianca Life Miles. Closed, I'm not sure what that means. Maybe it means it's closed. Ugh, that might be rough. Like I wouldn't want to fly 14 hours in economy if I don't have to, if you have that choice, right? So it's not super clear. I probably want to roll the dice and just book that. If we look here at Air France, about 250,000 miles. That's not a good deal. I probably wouldn't do that. Maybe play around with the dates. So that's the last thing we're going to do here, because the only decent option I'm seeing is actually this flight here, with a long layover in Geneva, but still you get to Greece and it's in a pretty comfortable business class product. Okay, so the last thing we want to do in a case like this, we'll play around with the days around it. This is why being flexible is super important. And then if this doesn't give me what I want, maybe like a 40 to 60,000 point business class one way, then I will look at neighboring cities that I could fly into or drive to and fly out of. Maybe you'll get better options, right? So look here, this just opened up, different options. Still, these are actually a little bit worse. Let's sort by business class. Yeah, 32 hours. So then I would just kind of play around with the dates. You never know what the system's going to give you. And we're playing around there. Let's pop over to Qantas, which I found some surprise deals in. I think I found, when I was doing this research before, I think I found something like a really good Emirates flight. Let's keep looking. See if I can find it for you. Boom, and there we go. Look what we found on Qantas rewards. We just found a first class Emirates ticket taking you from New York to Athens, and I believe it's direct, and it's only 129,000 points. So not the lowest cost in points, but I would probably argue this is the highest value in points. 129,000 points, where Amex is trying to charge you 440,000 points for a business class product with, I believe, this one might be direct. Yeah, this one is direct, but a lot of these have connections. So question is, do you want to spend, I think for first class, if we go back to the first class search, you want to spend $5,000 for flying on like British Airways first class, which is pretty nice, to go with a connection? Or do you want to drop 130,000 points and $100 out of your pocket to fly first class Emirates, probably on the A380? It's Boeing 777, but still pretty freaking nice. Totally worth this. I would do this in a heartbeat if I wanted to go to Greece anytime soon. Maybe I'll book this one after this video. But that's just goes to show you. And then if we went one step further, we're not going to do in this video because this has already gone on long enough. But if we went now to Emirates, so the next thing I would do, I would look at Emirates and see what the point cost would be there. Most likely going to be higher, but not always, but usually will be. And then I would also look at what airlines is Emirates partner with, right? So maybe I'll find backdoor inventory through like United or Qatar Airways, or I don't know off the top of my head what those would be, but that's just an example of next step and level. Like you could go very deep down the rabbit hole here, but you can see just by looking at several of the popular options, being a little bit flexible with the dates and just playing around with the system, I found an insane deal that, let's say you don't even have 130,000 points, anyone can get access to 37,800 points and $49. Usually a credit card sign-up bonus will give you that within the first 90 days. Boom, you could fly even economy for free, more or less for free, $49, one way to Athens. Pretty cool, in my opinion, I think so. So that's just a tip of the iceberg on how you do this stuff. This is how I've been able to do it. Obviously, earning points is a huge part of this. I'll probably have something guiding you for free in the link in the description. If you want someone to just do this for you, definitely reach out to Eli and Tommy. I'll link back to both of them underneath this video. But I hope this opened your eyes to the world of points and the cool stuff you can do.